Hey YouTube, this is Fragments of Memory, aka the Armchair Philosopher, once again. I was checking out this video earlier today called by a YouTuber named MrDestruction25. A very passionate, zealous type of brother, but made some very good points in his vid. Um, it's called Regarding Lesbian Woman Slammed to Ground for Resisting Arrest. He linked it to a video on worldstarhiphop.com. It took place in a Quiznos in Miami. Now, this was a woman that was a lesbian, and she was what the term a stud, I guess, which is the woman who's a lesbian who dresses like a man and has the mannerisms of a man, but obviously still a woman and homosexual. Well, according to the video description on worldstarhiphop.com, this woman was being disruptive after management refused service to her, though according to the description. The management, of course, called the police. Now, at this point in the video, the police officer got the woman in the hold, and he's saying, "Put your hands behind your arms, ma'am," and she's struggling to not do it. He says, "Put your your hands behind your back, ma'am. Put your hands behind your back, ma'am," and she just kept struggling and saying no, and she's crying as though she's in a helpless situation. And MrDestruction25 made some very good points. One of the things he did point out is that this was a woman who was portraying herself as a man ultimately, and I am someone who is of the opinion, once you take on that role, once you step into the role of a man, you must be prepared to deal with the consequences of being a man. Um, Now this World Star Hip Hop video reminds me of another incident happened back in New York at a McDonald's. There was a lesbian couple, and one of the girls slapped the McDonald's employee, and then they jumped over the counter and they were about to attack him, but he commences to wallop the living snot out of him. And one of the girls is like, "We're women. How you gonna do that to a woman?" And I mean, and again, I'm of the opinion, once that woman stepped into that man's role or the male role, she now has to eat whatever consequences are involved in that male role. Matter of fact, that slam, and I hate to say this, but it was impressive. Like the cop did some like WWE type, just body slam, bam. It was like, whoa. That was some like comic book superhero type stuff. But anyway, I digress. Um, I figure that number one, here's what I'm imagining went down. Here's what I imagine went down. Basically, this couple was most likely being disrespectful. Um, and management said, "Okay, we won't serve you here. Please leave." They didn't leave, and the lady was probably getting loud, like, "What? What? Yeah, call the police." This, that, and the third. And then the police show up, and then all of a sudden she's like, "Don't grab me!" Blah 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 blah. Now, some of the points that Mr. Destruction made were that one, if we're all supposed to be equal, if men and women are equal, we're supposedly equal under the law. And at this point, the law says if a police officer, a law enforcement officer with authority comes and says, "Ma'am, either leave," or "Ma'am, please put your hands behind your head," or "Sir, please put your hands behind your back," and then the first thing you do is try to resist and run away, that's resisting arrest. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm the police force's cheerleader, and as a black man, I know law enforcement can be rough. But that law enforcement officer was saying, "Hey, stop resisting arrest," but yet this lady kept trying to like scramble and kick out and scream and yelling and all of this stuff. And the reality is, once that officer says, "Ma'am, put your hands behind your back," you stop and you comply. At that point, the cop has to use whatever force is needed in order to subdue you. And if you wanted to claim you're a woman, besides you acting in a female's role, or excuse me, a male role, but if you wanted to, you shouldn't have been acting the way you were acting to bring the police to you if what the description of the video says is correct. And if you resist arrest, you are dealt with, male or female. That's another point, Mr. Destruction25. And I have to say, I agree with him on this. And I'm not sitting here saying, let's go around and if we see a lesbian couple, let's harass and beat them. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that if you are wrong in the eyes, in the legal sense, you're wrong and you're going to be dealt with. Just like the McDonald's incident. No law enforcement was involved. That man was defending himself. He was not. He was not harassing them. They bothered him at his job, and he responded in kind. So be careful. You can't, in one instance, say, I'm a stud, I'm this, that, and the third, and then turn around and say, oh, but I'm a lady, you have to treat us like women. It doesn't work that way. In maybe some parallel universe, that might work, but in this one, it doesn't work like that. So what I would respectfully say is, if a police officer steps to you, whether you're gay, straight, transgender, bisexual, pansexual, whatever your orientation or preference, whatever it is, listen to the police. And unfortunately, a lot of people are going to frame this as a violence against women or violence against gays issue, when really it's not a violence against gays issue. This is a hey, you're resisting arrest, I'm dealing with you as a law enforcement officer. And it wasn't like it was just this excessive force thing. The police officer was trying to grab the woman because she was kicking and flailing about, and instead of just saying, okay, I'll go. And then, she's trying to pull out, and and the cop is trying his best not to do any physical, like, excessive force. And then finally, when the chick just wouldn't comply, he just scoop slammed her, bam, and that's how it went down. And that was probably the best he could do at that time. So, Mr. Destruction25, I enjoyed your video. I enjoyed your perspective. And to those that see, just go on worldstarhiphop.com and see that video. And wow, that's all I got to say. Well, take it easy. Have a good day. Peace.